Hello everyone and welcome back to another video here at the Graphic Library. Today I'll be reviewing the Planet Hulk Omnibus. This is a very popular and critically acclaimed Hulk story. It's been adapted a few times in animated movies, TV shows, as well as parts of it were put into the Thor Ragnarok movie, part of the MCU. So we'll be talking a bit about that. As you can see, it's a pretty thin book. It's actually, the main story is only about 17 issues, I think, which isn't super long, but it's nice, keeps it brief, and then they put some other things in here. This story is written by Greg Pak and illustrated by Carlo Pagulayan and Brian Lopresti, primarily. And then that's the main story, and then the little bits and pieces are done by other people. In this video, we'll talk about the contents of this book, the lead-up events, that take us to the main story. The main story itself, as well as the characters that we are introduced to. We'll talk about the ending and the future of Hulk after this, which will contain some spoilers. And then some miscellaneous things talking about the other things in this book. And as always, we'll finish with the art. As for the contents of this book, really interesting. It doesn't start with Hulk issues. It starts with a few issues from the Fantastic Four. So we have Fantastic Four issues 533 to 535 in here. Then we have issues from the Incredible Hulk 88 to 105. We have Giant Size Hulk number 1, which is just like a sort of special. What If Planet Hulk, material from New Avengers Illuminati, which is really important. Amazing Fantasy 15, and then the Planet Hulk Gladiator Guidebook, which is just sort of like a fun compilation of information at the end of this book. So that's what's in this book, and as I said, very interesting that we start with some Fantastic Four issues, but that's where we're going to start. So the Hulk is a very popular Marvel character, especially pre-MCU. He was one of the top 5, maybe even top 3 most popular, most profitable comic book characters from Marvel, and he has a long history, which is very dynamic, where he has been a hero, he has been a villain, he has been an outcast, always this force of nature. So we're not quite sure where Hulk will be in his journey whenever we pick up a Hulk book. At this point, when we start with the Fantastic Four issues, Hulk is very much in control of himself. He is acting heroically, and he's approached by S.H.I.E.L.D. Because there's this problem with this bomb that they want to defuse. Unfortunately, it doesn't go so well for Hulk. He's not able to defuse it. Gamma bomb blows up, he loses control. Okay, and this is why we start in a Fantastic Four book, because then the Thing and the Human Torch, 2 members of the Fantastic Four, are sent in to contain the Hulk before he levels Las Vegas. So there's a shift in the Hulk where he goes from hero to being hunted, and he has this big fight with the Thing and Human Torch. And hopefully throughout this fight we get flashes of Hulk's origin, just in case you're not sure, but it's things that people are familiar with. You know, he's a scientist, he's testing this gamma radiation bomb. He heroically pushes someone out of the way when the bomb goes off, but he gets caught in it, he becomes the Hulk. But then you also see things which are people are less familiar with in his history. For example, he had this fling with this alien princess, which didn't end too well, but she died. So that's just sort of like sort of a backstory that we get for the Hulk through this fight. The fight ends, the Hulk is able to regain control of himself, but the damage is done. And then we jump to the Hulk issues, and it starts off with Bruce Banner, isolating himself because he knows that he's dangerous, and also he doesn't want to be confronted by anybody after his big fight. So this is something that Bruce Banner does quite a lot. He isolates himself, he outcasts himself. This doesn't always end well, because he's often confronted with a situation where he can either preserve his isolation by letting bad things happen, or out himself by acting heroically. And at his center, the Hulk is a hero, so he acts heroically. After he reveals himself, he's approached by Nick Fury, who sends him on a secret mission up into space to deal with something only the Hulk can deal with. This mission goes well for the Hulk. He doesn't die, but then something happens where he is trapped in a spaceship and is blasted off, and he doesn't know what's going on. And then we get this fun little video that pops up, and it is some of the Hulk's friends, some other heroes, who actually tell him that they're the ones who trapped him in this ship and sent him off because he's too dangerous. And this is where we get to the New Avengers Illuminati issue. So in the Marvel Universe, and this is so fun, the Illuminati are a group of elite heroes who meet secretly to talk about things that are going on and decide what should happen in the Marvel Universe without anybody else's knowledge. So this group usually contains royalty and leaders of certain factions, as well as geniuses. So in this, and the group changes a little bit throughout its history, but there are the core members that remain. So we have Iron Man, of course, Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, Doctor Strange for the sort of mystical art side of things, Black Bolt, who is the leader and the king of the Inhumans, and in this issue we also have Namor, who is the king of Atlantis. We also have Professor X, the leader of the mutants. The Illuminati gather and they're like, look, after this latest incident in Las Vegas, we can't trust the Hulk. He causes too much damage, too many deaths probably. We need to send him away without killing him, because we're good people. They're not good people. So that's what they do. They're the ones who orchestrated this mission up in space, and the plan was to send the Hulk into this world where he can't hurt anyone because there's no one there, but it's safe and peaceful. Of course, that doesn't go to plan because the Hulk wrecks the spaceship and ends up going somewhere else. He lands on this very rough gladiatorial world. This is where we get the start of the Planet Hulk saga, right? Because it's the planet that he lands on. So Hulk lands on this planet, and in his weakened state, he's captured, sold as a slave off to this gladiatorial arena. And we see him spend some time fighting there. Everybody sees he's really impressive. The king sees that he's really impressive, and the king wants to fight him. So the king jumps down. He's like, "I'm gonna fight you." Doesn't go well for the king because it's the Hulk, right? The Hulk doesn't win because the king sort of cheats, but the Hulk makes him bleed, which is a big deal. So Hulk gets sent off into another arena to do some grueling training where they're expecting him to die. He doesn't die. Surprise, surprise. While he has a sort of troop, the gladiators he fights with, the other ones who survived this grueling process, and they become something that's called war bound, okay, where they're like bound together in war, which is a really nice sentiment. So some of these people are Meek and Korg, who we see in the Thor Ragnarok movie. Not super similar, but the characters are based off these guys. You see a Brood, an unnamed Brood, who is... the Brood are just a popular alien species in the Marvel Universe. There is Elo Caffey, who is a young girl, and she is part of the dominant species here on this world, Sakaar. And we also have Heroine, the Shadow Priest. So this is a sort of troop that the Hulk is with, and these also become the characters throughout this story. Another important character, one who is not on the Hulk side, is Kyera, the Old Strong, who is basically the lieutenant, second in charge to the king. So Hulk and the gladiators actually become quite close. They go through a series of trials together that the king puts them through, and one of them we get a guest special appearance from the Silver Surfer, who wandered into this wormhole by accident. Again, was in a weakened state and was captured. So it's actually really funny because you have a scene similar to what we get in Thor Ragnarok, where Thor sees the Hulk, right? And he's like, "Oh, this is great. He's a friend." And then the Hulk just pummels him. You get a similar thing here, where Hulk sees Silver Surfer. He's like, "Oh, that's great. I know this guy. He's my friend." And Silver Surfer's just like, "I'm gonna kill you," because of course they are controlled and they are slaves. During this fight, the Silver Surfer gets free, and using his powers, he's able to free the rest of the slaves, not just the gladiators fighting, but the slaves in the rest of the city. And there is this mass exodus from the kingdom, led by Hulk and the other gladiators. As we see this, we see hints of Hulk fulfilling perhaps this ancient prophecy that Sakaar, the planet, has. And the people think that he is just, almost like promised Messiah, this person in the prophecy that will set the world free. And you have cool little things where his blood touches the ground, there is life and like plants that grow from that, and that's part of the prophecy. And you have this cool narrative framing device where the planet is actually narrating some of what's happening through the lens of this prophecy, which I thought it was cool. But anyway, you have this massive exile of the slaves and gladiators from the city, and they choose to, instead go into the wilderness. But at this time, they're also pursued by Kyera the Old Strong, leading the king's army. And, I don't know if you picked it up, but there seems to be some pretty strong biblical allusions here to the book of Exodus, Moses taking the Israelites out to the wilderness. So you have this sort of guerrilla warfare, this cat and mouse game of, the king's army versus, I'm going to say the gladiators, and that faction there. And we get the occasional snapshots of the city where the king himself is dealing with civil unrest. And he's also slightly going mad because he's crazy. Now, we spend a bit of time in the wilderness. The gladiators come across a few different things. I'm not going to get into all of that, but I will talk a bit about the ecosystem of this planet. So it is a very lived-in world, and there are different tiers and factions that are revealed along the way. Different groups of people, different species even. So you have the pink-skinned aliens, who are the dominant culture, the dominant race on Sakaar, which is the name of the planet. They are not native to the planet, but they are the dominant ones. And of course you have, villages, you have farmers, peasants, you have the nobility, you have royalty, that sort of thing. And of course slaves, which we see earlier. There are also these things called wilderbots, which are also aliens, but they're also robots. And they're sort of wild and they do their own sort of thing. And then we have this bug species who are native to this planet. They used to be very numerous with a very healthy population, but they have been subjugated by the dominant species and now are basically slaves. And then you have these things called the spikes. Now you hear about them here and there throughout the book without getting a lot of information, but basically they are a parasitic species that crash landed onto this planet, and when they touch somebody, they basically take them over, and it just spreads. So the king actually got in power by dealing with these. And then you have the shadow people. Not much is known about the shadow people. In fact, we don't even know if they're native or if they're not. But basically, they are this religious group who mostly keep to themselves. Kyera, the Old Strong, is a shadow person, and so is Heroine, the Shadow Priest. And those are all the sort of factions or species that you have on Sakaar. I think it's really interesting and really well done how it is in this book. It seems very lived in, it seems very real. There is obviously this rich history of Sakaar and these complex relationships and dynamics between each of the different species, and even within the species themselves, like the dominant culture. And it's something that, you're not hit with a wall of narration right at the beginning. You're just in this world, and as you look around, it's revealed to you, and you learn, the history, the social dynamics, the culture, everything. I think it's really interesting how it's done. It is a little bit confusing to begin with, as with most things, but I think if you just keep reading, it makes a lot more sense, and you start to piece the puzzles together of this complex world. So I think that's a really fun aspect of this book. As we continue to follow the gladiators in the wilderness, we see some cracks start to form, and I think it's really interesting, and also really good because each of these characters that we're introduced to have their own motives, have their own personalities, work well with some people, don't work well with others. I think it just makes sense and makes them feel like real characters, some more so than others. I think one of these characters especially is Meek, and through him we have this sort of moral conversation about violence and whether it solves problems or whether it just breeds more violence. And you see this deep friendship and respect between the Hulk and Meek, but also this divide in understanding, especially with Meek being a native. So anyway, Kyera the Old Strong catches up with Hulk. They have this fight. I should say she has a special ability that only she has. It's not a shadow people thing, but she is able to make herself invulnerable or parts of herself invulnerable for a short amount of time. So that's something you see here in this fight. But eventually the spikes, as we talked about before, they catch up to both factions, the gladiators and also the army. And, as per usual, they have to team up. So Kyera and the Hulk have to team up to deal with this. Now, this is where I'm going to put the spoiler warning. We're going to talk about the end of this book as well as where it goes in the future. I'm not going to spoil the future, but I'm just going to talk about the end of this book. By listening to the spoiler, you're still going to have a good time reading this if you choose to do so. But of course, it is better to go in blind. And it's also really easy to find and to read. As I said, it's only about 17 issues, the main story. You can read it really easily online, or if you know me, you can borrow this book. I don't mind. Anyway, so spoilers start now. So while defending themselves from the spikes, Kaera and the Hulk find themselves trapped in this village, and they're also trying to defend this village, right? And they're doing so, and they're doing well, and then the king decides to basically nuke the village. Kaera is there defending the village. She's holding this child. The whole village is destroyed. This child disintegrates in her arms. Of course, she is okay because she has that invulnerability power, but she basically, from this point forward, sets herself against the king. So now the gladiators, with Kaera in tow, head back to the city, besiege it, take on the king, kill him, no worries, and now Hulk is named the emperor or the king. He takes Kaera as his wife and queen, and everybody has a happy ending. False. But we'll get to that. So, of course, in this new leadership, the cracks that existed before within the gladiators, they're still there. We have Elo Caffey, who is one of the dominant species, and then we have Meek, one of the natives. These two species obviously have a problem with each other. They have a fight in the gladiatorial ring, and I think that just goes to show that just because there's a new emperor, the Hulk, it doesn't mean that things are instantly healed or better. But the Hulk does, along with all of his gladiators, working together, put in a lot of time and effort and strength and energy to repair the world. And now we get to the sort of twist ending of the book. So while repairing the damage done to the city during the siege, the ship that the Hulk came in is uncovered, and it starts to beep, like malfunction or something. And it ends up blowing up. And it's a big explosion that destroys the city and ruptures something in the planet's core. Most people die. The Hulk survives because he is a survivor. Unfortunately, Kaera doesn't survive, and she dies in the Hulk's arms. And the Hulk blames the Illuminati, of course, because he believes that this bomb was set off by them. Now, a lot of the other gladiators, they happen to be on a ship at this time, and they do survive. And basically, they're like, hey, Hulk, we're really mad. You seem really mad. It's kind of your thing. Let's go to Earth, and let's get revenge. And the sequel to this book is this huge Marvel event called World War Hulk. Basically, Hulk and his gladiators go to Earth, and they seek revenge on the Illuminati in particular. So this is how this book ends. It's really sort of poignant, also a cliffhanger, but overall a very brave and interesting way to end the story. Even though it seems abrupt, the ending actually flows quite well from what happens, and it leads on really well to what comes next, being World War Hulk. Now, I think the art in this book is really, really good. It errs way more on the side of realism in terms of comic art. It is, I think just really solid. It suits the story that it's telling. It is simultaneously grand and epic, but also very detailed. So I think the art is really solid and consistent throughout. It's good. Overall, this book is a great read. It's a really, really solid story. You get very invested in all the characters that you meet, in the story that it's telling. There are some fun and light moments in this book, but at the same time, there are some really heavy and very tragic moments as well. It's a quick read. It balances all the elements in the story really well. It balances the characters that we meet. It balances the world that we meet them in and the different species. I think this is a great read. You don't need to know much about the Marvel Universe history or the history of the Hulk as well. It really takes things in its own direction. I think it's a great character study of the Hulk. It's just a great book all around. So I can 100% recommend this if you want to read it. That's all for today. Here's a little sneak peek at what we're going to be looking at next month.
That's me! You said my name! I get an episode?
If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you have anything to say or any questions, leave a comment. If you want to see more, please subscribe. But until next time, thanks for watching.